I've done that. I've said allow.
There we go. Alrighty. Okay, well, welcome Simone. Welcome Sadie to the first of our Artist Spotlight series, Living Colour, as part of our 2023 BUC Arts exhibition. And before we get started, first off, I just want to, first of all, welcome everyone here, and then acknowledge that today we are dialing in from many different places, from lands far and wide that have never been seeded. And in particular, Simone and I and Sadie meet on Wurundjeri and Wadawurrung country. And we welcome others to share and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands you may be listening in from tonight. I also like to acknowledge any First Nations peoples that might be listening to this post being made available online, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And particularly this week, we hold our First Nations peoples in our hearts in the heartache and disappointment preceding the outcome of the recent referendum. And I want to share some words from our Uniting Church President, Reverend Sharon Hollis. Let us ask ourselves, how will we stand with First Nations people in their sorrow? Where can we show up next alongside First Nations people? How will we support Indigenous people's desire for self-determination and justice? And how will we engage in seeking God's reconciling love? So as we move forward, let us hold these reflections in our hearts. Thank you, Sadie. So tonight we're going to be talking with Simone about imagined worlds. So Simone is one of our very well-known and respected artists as part of our community. She's recently moved out to regional Victoria, but prior to that, we had the pleasure of having her as part of our BUC Arts Committee, and she has played a very active role in a lot of the community arts groups that Brunswick is very privileged to host at the Brunswick Uniting Church. So welcome, Simone. It's good to have you here tonight, and thank you so much for offering to let us interview you and ask you some questions about your artistic process.
Thank you, Courtney. That's a lovely introduction.
No worries. Well, maybe as a starting point, it might be worth us sharing a little bit about yourself. And I wonder, Simone, if you might share a little bit about yourself, how you came to kind of be a creator, and maybe just some kind of really high level about your artistic journey to date.
Sure. So I've sort of had a look at some suggested questions that you sent through, so I might make my way through them if that's okay, because I've done some responses.
Yeah.
So I'll start by talking about my process for creating art. For me, rather than being really planned with my work, I like to use an intuitive process. So my inspiration usually starts from my interaction with an object. So I might have the idea of something first, for example, the theme of this exhibition, but the object and my response to it is what kind of sets off the chain of ideas and inspiration. So for these artworks for this exhibition, it was around this branch that I had. So because my process is object focused, that's why I like to work with reclaimed items, things like sculpture with natural or recycled materials, or collage, for example, from existing images or shapes. I then go through what is often a quite painful process of failures, where I try lots of different things and they don't quite work, and I get very frustrated and think it's not going to work. And then I finally get to a point where something starts working, and then I kind of pursue that. So I go down that sort of path and, okay, this is working. Maybe I can try this. And then I get to the point where I'm quite happy with what I have. and then I sort of refine it into a final product. But it's worth noting that what I envision in my head at the start, the idea that I have, is usually very different to how it turns out in the end.
No, that's very interesting to hear, because I suppose in the current day and age, a lot of times you kind of see the final result, or maybe kind of like a really abbreviated version of the process to arrive at the final outcome. So is it good to hear, or maybe refreshing to hear, that even though you might kind of you've got these wonderful, amazing artworks as an output, that the journey there isn't always so straightforward, or maybe you don't have that kind of end result envision in mind, and that there are a lot of failures to get to that point, because I think it's only natural that that would be the process, but it's not often something that you hear a lot about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I know that artists do things differently, but that's the way it's always worked for me, and it's felt like the most creative process, I suppose.
Hmm. And do you? I'm curious about what you're talking about an object kind of being your inspiration for a particular piece. Do you get the inspiration first to want to create something and then go out seeking an object, or is it just maybe you're, I don't know, on a walk or something, and you see an object and you think, oh, that, I feel like that's inspiring to me. I can see that as a piece that I might like to work on. Do you go out and seek certain objects, or do you wait for that inspiration to come to you?
I think I probably wait for the object itself to come to me. Certainly, sometimes we'll have an idea, and then use the object to sort of bring that to fruition. So for for these artworks, I was a bit stumped, I have to say, because for whatever
Unintended?
reason,
Or
the theme of the exhibition, which is a really lovely theme, it just didn't bring up anything in my mind. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And feeling a bit of pressure because, you have, sort of looming deadline. And so I had the idea in my mind of, the theme and responding to the theme in some way. And then we were lopping some branches off this tree. And I just felt this real kinship with the branches. And I thought, oh, there's something here I can explore. And I didn't know what it was, but I just kind of kept going down that path. Like, okay, well, how would I want to explore it? And I decided to do photography, which was kind of interesting because I haven't done a lot of photography. I do a lot of other mediums, but yeah, photography is a bit different for me. And actually, the photos I took, like with a time lapse photography, not time lapse, what's it called? Like with a timer.
exposure, kind of.
Yeah, so I took the photos of myself. Like I didn't have a photographer. I just had the camera all set up. And then just, yeah, kind of went into and took the photos and then went back and looked at them. So it was this interesting process with the branch, with the camera. It was kind of the three of us just sort of working it out between ourselves. So yeah, I think it's there's always going to be some idea at the start, but the idea and the object and the final result can be quite different and unexpected.
Hmm. No, that's really interesting. It shows to me like an openness to curiosity, and following it where it kind of takes you, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's also a fantastic segue to the next question, which is about how you have such a broad array of different mediums that you use. I know that others can't see this just yet, but we do have further down in this slideshow, we've got a number of different pieces of Simone's, and everyone is different and varied, and you can see very different ideas coming through in each and every one. So I was wondering, Simone, if you could talk a little bit about what kind of leads you to one medium over the other, and where you got this kind of curiosity to explore different mediums rather than kind of stick to one and refine that, rather explore lots of different types?
Yes, I've come to realize that there are two different types of artists. So there's the ones that are just like really focused on one medium, like you say, and about refining that medium. And there are others that are just inspired, like me, by a really broad range of things and just always really interested in learning new techniques and exploring different kind of materials. Um, so I find that inspiration occurs in like a really broad range of ways for me, so that um, if I've tried just working in one medium and I find it's actually stifles my creativity. So I'll start in that medium, but then I kind of get blocked after I've worked in it for a while, and I need to actually go and work in another medium to um, like to get in that creative flow again. So um, that's quite tricky for an artist because it's really hard to kind of refine your practice if you're constantly moving from one thing to the next. You learn a lot of things, but you don't get to refine things. So my approach to that is to like limit the number of things. So I kind of try and limit it to four different mediums at a time. And then within that, I can kind of move between them, and that helps me to still have that um, yeah, that variety of creative input. And it does feel connected to me, but it's just not sort of obvious, I guess, the way that it's connected.
Hmm.
Um,
No,
so
it's very, very interesting. Do you have, of the kind of mediums that you have tried, do you find that you ever cycle back to one that you've maybe tried a long time ago and to try again, or you feel like you've been inspired to use that medium again and you don't not hitting that creative block? Or is it always something new?
no, I think as long as there's variety, I'm able to get past those blocks. So um, in a little while we'll see. I did a solo exhibition that was all knitted pieces, and I got to a point where I just felt really overloaded by that experience because I had to create so many pieces for a solo exhibition, and I couldn't knit any more pieces. I just got really, really kind of um, yeah, just worn out by it. It felt like it
Mm,
was kind of a chore in the end. But I find that if I have those four different things going at once, I can kind of, okay, I don't want to work on that right now. I'm going to work on this, and then that keeps the creative sort of flow happening in another way, and then I can then go back to that other thing later.
mm,
And some things I won't do for ages. Um, so I'm a jeweler, and um, I was doing a lot of that in around sort of 2018, early 2019, maybe. And then I just didn't do it for like a couple of years. It was so long that I had to go back and remind myself how to do things like soldering and things, which was quite annoying. But um, yeah, I'm actually doing some jewelry work right at the moment, and it's really nice to be back in that space again and working with those tools and those mediums and the materials again. So yeah, I never give up on anything. It just means that I have a lot of different things to pick
mm.
up and put down.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of choice keeps things interesting, certainly.
Yes.
I can definitely relate to that. Definitely. Sadie, we might go through a couple of the pieces that we do have on the slide. So maybe we pause quickly on this one, and sorry to go off script, Simone, but I was wondering if for this one you might talk us through um, the living color, specifically how that has influenced this particular piece that you're exhibiting as part of the exhibition.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I got really inspired by this branch, and there was actually multiple branches. There was a lot of them, but I think this was probably the largest one. Um, and I knew that I wanted to do something with it. And I was thinking about living color, and the color that we are surrounded by every day is kind of the same color. Like it's this sort of, because we're in an area with a lot of trees and a lot of nature. So they're not sort of bright colors. And I was thinking about living color to me just seemed to be about like really vivid, bright colors. So I saw it as an opportunity to explore being outside of nature, and the contrast between the natural um, branch and then the background being sort of suspended in this artificial or unreal or imagined space. And it kind of taking it away from the natural environment allowed me to reflect on that branch on its own rather than in the context of the broader garden and sort of nature that we're in. I also was thinking about, so one of the reasons I felt this kinship with the branch was because it's not a native tree. It's called a princess tree, and it's quite common in Japan, I think, and other parts of Asia. But when we moved here, a lot of the plants in our garden are introduced species, and we're really keen to have native species in our garden. So we sort of see the introduced species as kind of pests, and they're annoying, and we want to get rid of them. Um, but at the same time, when we're cutting down these branches and they have these beautiful curves to them, and I'm thinking about, well, we're sort of an introduced species in this space as well. And so this was an opportunity for me to reflect on, well, what is the role of that we have in this space as well, and to kind of reflect on that in this suspended artificial environment, which is away from nature. So it's sort of, um, you know, who are we and what are we in this world, and what is our role? So yeah, as I say in the description, one of the things I felt really strongly is that we have um, this role as custodians, because we came here and there's all these like birds and ducks and all this nature, and it feels like it's up to us to look after that and to nurture that. And so that and cutting down that branch was part of that feeling of being a custodian. So there's a bit of conflict in there as well, in terms of feeling close to the branch but also conflicted with it.
Mm. Oh, that's really, really powerful reflection. I think you can definitely get that sense through the art, and one of the things I had reflected on at the opening night as well was something similar to what you just shared. It just reminded me of that, how living color, we always think of kind of bright, cheery colors, but it's not just that. You can use color to paint a very broad spectrum of emotions and reflections. You can definitely see that coming through here. We might move through a couple more pieces.
Yep, sorry, my
Sadie?
phone fell down.
No, you're all good. All good.
So this piece I did quite a long time ago. So it was back in 2019. It was one of the first sculptures that I did using reclaimed materials. And this was made using copper. So this was when I was in a jewelry studio. So I had access to a lot of copper sheeting, and then using these curved pieces of wood, which were just in a box sort of discarded in the studio. So I used it as an opportunity to kind of explore. Yeah, it's probably an early thought around imagined worlds, and being very influenced by kind of Japanese aesthetics, and also the sort of the fantasy world of the Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli productions. So really enjoying working with those kind of cloud shapes and the feeling of lightness of the sculpture, and yeah, the idea that it can hang on the wall. It is actually quite heavy, but it sort of had a lightness in its feeling to me. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely gives that sense of lightness looking at it, but yeah, explicitly looking at the materials, I can see how it might have been a little bit difficult to lift.
Yes.
Yeah. Could we go to the next one, Sadie?
So these were some sculptures that I did for the last exhibition at Brunswick, which that was the emergence one, wasn't it,
Yeah,
Sadie?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So the inspiration behind this was actually the experience of lockdown and wearing masks. So the wire sculptures are actually masks, and they actually do fit on my face. And I had a companion piece to this, which was actually me holding the sculpture up to my face as well, to sort of, indicate that that was how I had seen it. So the technique of making the mask was actually one that I learned from my mum, who's a florist and kind of a botanical sculptor. So using individual wire and creating this kind of chicken wire shape. Um, yeah, so I get again, this was kind of an imagined world. I mean, the mask is kind of something that was very personal and very down to earth, but using the sort of the lines of the sculpture, I was thinking about constellations in the sky, and then how that sort of how the plastic pieces, which are recycled lids that I sprayed, how they kind of create that sense of life outside of the world. So again, a kind of imagined world sort of feeling to it, something unearthly, I suppose.
Absolutely. And the question I was going to
I'm
ask
sorry.
there is around. I think you may have already answered it in each of your reflections on your pieces. Is what do you seek? And maybe we use this specific piece as an example. When you're creating art, do you seek to inspire others as well through your art? And what might it be that you're trying to inspire in others, or is that not necessarily part of your creative process?
I mean, I think that my artworks are always intending to engage with the viewer, so to create an experience for the viewer. And something I'm really inspired by is, the sort of installation immersive art. And that's something that I always think about when I'm making my artworks, is how can I transport someone to another feeling, another place, through how they're viewing my artworks. So yeah, I don't know if it is inspirational or if it's just a kind of an experience. I don't know if it inspires people to think about their own journeys, creative journeys. It'd be nice to think so, but I probably don't think that far. I think more about just that experience of relating to the artwork, and how important that is to me when I'm experiencing others' artworks.
Well, definitely. Well, maybe we'll go to the next one, and uh, on that topic of trying to bring people into the artwork and to have them engage and feel like an emotive response to the work that you're putting forward. I'm interested by how you yourself have been influenced by other artists in your life, and how maybe your practice has been shaped by that influence over the course of your kind of artistic journey.
Yes, I'm definitely inspired by the people around me and the people that I have worked with artistically in the past. So one of my biggest influences is my mum, who started doing floristry and botanic sculpture about 15 years ago, maybe a bit longer. And I've worked with her and learned lots of techniques from her. So things like the chicken wire technique is one of the things that I've learned from her. I've also, assisted her to do these big installations for the Flower and Garden Show, which was really interesting. And I think working in that way, under someone who has this vision is a really interesting way of learning about their process and how they kind of how they respond to themes and to spaces. So because installation art is really around, you know, filling a space or presence in a space. Another sort of area of influence for me has been artists in art studios that I've been a member of. So since sort of late 2018, I've been a member of various art studios, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to learn from others and to be inspired by their processes and their materials and mediums. And yeah, so that there's an artwork that we'll see a bit later that is a sculpture that's on a mannequin, and it was really inspired by the focus of a lot of the artists in the studio I was in, called Pink Ember, was around the body. And I don't do a lot of work on that topic because my work is often sort of nature-based, and it's usually more abstract. So it was something that I really wanted to explore, was, you know, how I could go down that avenue and learn from the sort of the focus that they had and the processes they used, but respond to it in my own kind of way. And that artwork was used for a group exhibition that was for the studio. So that was kind of a nice way to explore it as well. So in terms of this artwork in particular, this is I think this might have been the first collage that I did, the very early one. And this was in the first Brunswick exhibition, which was called What is Creativity? Which to me was a theme around getting people to think about the processes and the activities they engaged in and how they expressed their creativity through those. And how we could sort of share that with others. So for me, the intention of that exhibition was to be really interactive. I'm not sure how people responded to this image. I'd be interested to know what your response is, because for me, it was just very experimental, and because I was doing some of the flower arranging at church at the time, so it was kind of a reflection on that, and yeah, and how we offer things and what we offer.
I'm thinking of my reflection, and I think what I took from this when I first saw it, or first thing that stuck out to me was I think the colors are very complementary, particularly the shade of the lipstick, with I assume that's purple cauliflowers at the very top. But the kind of contrast of something very natural with something very kind of manufactured. Yeah, that was something that stuck out to me in the initial piece, and also the like a lipstick often associated with, you know, beauty. It's a beauty product, but you've created a different type of beauty here through bringing in natural materials. Yeah, that's my initial reflections. Sadie, I don't know if you have anything to offer as well.
Well, I noticed the same thing with the purple, the purple colors. I guess it gave me the opportunity to see ordinary vegetable leaves in a different way. Like, I really love playing around with food and creating different things from food. So to see it used in this way was really engaging for me. I really love the backwards view of the green leaf. It kind of really, I find it very engaging to look at that particular part of it.
So it's something that would end up in your compost, but now on feature, on display as kind of the main event.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right.
Next one.
Yeah. Let's actually maybe let's go to the next piece, which Simone just spoke about before. Yep.
Yeah, so this was the sculpture that I did for the group exhibition, and this was focusing more around the body. So I wanted to create like a kind of a corset that was kind of a bit challenging. So it's got a lot of spikes on it. And interestingly, this corset was created from the 3 masks that I used for the constellations pieces, which is part of my if I kept all of my artworks, I wouldn't have anywhere to put them. And I do have a really strong ethos around recycling and reusing. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to reuse things in a new way. And this was quite a fun way to do it. Obviously, wire has a real flexibility to it, so it does mold to new shapes, which was pretty exciting. And also all of those cable ties were used in the Unuseful exhibition, which was the textiles exhibition that I had, which we'll see some photos a bit later. So yes, there was a lot of recycled content in here. Some of those lids there I had resprayed from the constellations piece as well. And those spoons were also left over from the Natural Unnatural exhibition, which we'll see some photos of later too. This was a really fun piece, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing this one, and I've been thinking about doing some more kind of sculptural clothing things on the body. So maybe that's something that I'll pursue in the future when I get a bit more time.
Yeah, that's almost a statement in itself, how you've grouped together different elements of the different pieces that you've worked on before and recycled them into this piece. It's beautiful though. There's something it really kind of catches your eye about the colors that you've chosen, and the way that the gradient kind of flows down. Yeah, it's quite beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you. This one was very experimental to put together. So obviously started with the wire, and then just kept playing with different textures and different colors to see how things would look. And yeah, really happy with how it ended up.
Oh, lovely.
Just as a side note, the exhibition was connected to memes. So we had to use a meme as an inspiration for our artwork, which was a bit tricky for me because my inspiration, as I mentioned, was around reflecting on the body focus practice of the artists. But I ended up settling on Still Here as the title, and I found a grumpy cat meme of Still Here. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it says Still Here, worst apocalypse ever. And it's kind of a thing on COVID. And I thought that was really appropriate because this course, it was about COVID. It was about, 2 years out of the 3 or 4 that I was at this studio, we were in lockdown, and most of the time we couldn't even be in the studio. And so it was about the kind of, being a corset felt very personal, like it's about the body. And the spikiness was about, the defensive layers that we built up over that time because it was a really hard time. But then I have the color, which is kind of the celebration of the end of lockdown and of connecting again with people from my studio. So yeah, a bit of a story behind that one.
You mentioned the outward facing wires would also help with social distancing.
Yes, true.
Maintaining distance. Yeah, that's awesome. I could probably sit here and look at that one all night, but we'll keep going. So you mentioned there that this was a very experimental piece, and it sounds like that's a big part of your practice, is trying things out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, see what inspires you, see what doesn't. What would be your advice to people who may be just starting out on their artistic journey and might not be clear what medium they want to work in, or maybe they want to explore lots of different mediums? What would be your advice to those people?
I would say if a lot of things inspire you, just don't feel limited. Don't feel like you have to just do one thing. Try lots of things, and really important, don't feel pressure to have like a result to make something good or worth taking a photo of and sharing, because it's really about the process, and it's about being in that creative space. So if you're willing to accept that some things or a lot of things might not work out, I think that's also a really useful attitude to have, because yeah, I really think, like, we see the Instagram moment, we don't see the hundreds of hours behind that and all the things that went wrong. And I know it can feel that when you start doing something, it can feel like you're not going to get to the end, because it feels like such a long journey, and it is a long journey, but you do get to the end eventually. You'll get to something that feels good. And I think just let, like, go on that journey. And I think if you're feeling like less confident around your skills, I mean, I don't feel particularly confident around like my drawing and painting skills. I don't do a lot of drawing and painting. But there's lots of mediums that are more accessible. So for me, three-dimensional mediums are more accessible. That's just how I relate to materials. So I'd rather fold paper than draw on it, for example. But just find what feels accessible, and what you'd like to try. Collage can be a good sort of entry medium because you can use images or shapes that are already existing. But yeah, I think that's going to be different for different people. It's a really exciting journey, and I think, you know, as adults we think that we're not supposed to play. I'm hoping that that attitude is getting challenged, because play is just really important for any age, and it really, you know, it really nurtures your soul to play. So having that time to just make things that, who cares what they look like, and who cares if they look like what you thought, what you wanted them to look like. It's, you got to spend that time with those materials, just having a go and doing something. So yeah, I think being at the start of the journey is exciting because, yeah, you can just try stuff, you know?
Yeah, I suppose in a way, by kind of looking at lots of different mediums, you're starting your journey almost again and again and again through trying something new. And maybe that's part of where your inspiration comes from, as well as that excitement of getting to try something new for the first time and explore and play.
Yeah, definitely. It's that sense of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I can see you getting excited about it now, just talking about it. It's just kind of nice. Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, we have the next slide, actually. You can see some of those materials being used, which kind of speaks to the recycling and making sure that you're not wasting materials and seeking inspiration from things that might already be used, but using them in a very different way, which I really love, the kind of vibrant colors that come through in this particular piece. I did have a question on this one in particular. Those drawings on the wall, were these parts of or how did those kind of two mediums converge? Did you set out looking to combine both of them as a collective piece, or how did you combine those two mediums together?
Yes, an interesting question. And maybe, I don't know, I had to put in a proposal for this exhibition, and I'd only made 2 of the sculptures before I put in the proposal, and I'd done a bit of a sketch of some seafoam on paper. And I put that in as the proposal and said I was going to make more, and this is how they would relate to one another. And then the proposal was accepted, so then I had to make it all. And that's like a really strange process for me because, as I mentioned, you know, I'm very intuitive. And so having to like fulfill a brief that I've planned beforehand is a really kind of backwards way to do things in my creative process. And one of the, actually, I mean, doing the sculptures was a real joy because I got to play with different colors. And you'll see some of them are, so the idea was that they were all going to be on plinths, but they said, oh, we'll accept your exhibition, but you have to have everything hanging on the wall. So that was one challenge, was to how to make them look interesting when they were hanging. And I'd got this rope from someone. So all of these materials were actually recycled, aside from the fishing line which joins the sculptures together. So the rope was given to me, and so I was playing with making these kind of necklace pieces because they had to hang on the wall. So that kind of took me in a new direction. And then playing with different colors, because I had, a certain number of cans of spray paint, and just seeing how they looked and layering the different colors, which was also a really interesting process. I was given some colorful knives and spoons, and so I used that to create, so that artwork which that lady is touching in the middle. I got really cross about this photo because people weren't supposed to touch the artworks, but anyway, that blue, that they were actually the colors of these knives, and it was just fantastic. It was so exciting to have this bright color to work with. But then further over, you can see there's a purple one, and I had a lot of trouble with that spray paint can. It kept jamming, and so I ended up having this sort of flecked effect on the sculpture, which looked really interesting. And it was definitely something that I didn't intentionally create. So I enjoyed that process of just exploring with the sculptures. But the drawings, oh gosh, they were a struggle. So like I said, I don't draw a lot, and I don't have a lot of confidence in my drawing. And I'd had this idea to sketch sea foam, and I'd taken all these photos of sea foam, and I kept trying to draw it, and it just didn't look good. It didn't really look like anything. And I was getting really frustrated. I think I might have spent about 4 weeks trying to figure it out. So I'd sort of every week I'd be like, all right, I'll do another drawing. And then I'd be like, no, I can't do this. So I went back to the original inspiration for the sculpture, which was a photo that I'd taken in, what's that place called? Ocean Grove. And it was a photo of some seaweed that had washed up on the sand. And it was like that amazing sort of pinky purpley color. I don't know if you've seen that sort of seaweed. And that's what inspired me to create these like bright sculptures in the first place. But I'd also taken some photos of the dunes behind on that same evening. And so I ended up using those photos as the drawings. And for me, it really made sense to have those as kind of the landscape that the sculptures were sitting in, because that's actually where the seaweed was in the first place.
That's amazing how that came together, because it looks like it was always collectively that they all belong together
yes,
from the beginning. So it's interesting to hear that you I'd be interested to see those seafoam drawings actually.
If I kept them. I don't know. I was really tearing my hair out. I thought, I'm running out of time and I still don't know what I'm going to do.
It might end up in the next exhibition, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, the next few photos that we have are from another solo exhibition of yours, and one thing that I'm really interested to hear from you is what that experience was like. You've shared obviously a few anecdotes already about applying for exhibitions, and then how that's kind of impacted the creative process. But for you, what was it like having your very first solo exhibition?
Yes, it was a huge amount of work. I didn't realize how hard it is to do a solo exhibition, because I'd only ever put a few pieces into a group exhibition, which, someone else curates and does the theme for, and it's really, to do a solo exhibition is just that much more to do. So the number of pieces, and then thinking about how they're going to be perceived and how the space is going to be created. This exhibition in particular was really challenging because I had to curate it and hang it myself as well, which took about 7 hours. It was really exhausting. I kept thinking, oh, it won't take too long, and it just kept taking longer and longer. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience. Doing that curation definitely gave me an appreciation of the work of curators and the way that they create that environment and that experience when you go into an exhibition.
Mm.
And this one, I mean, I learned a lot through this exhibition. So I'd created these knitted pieces over a long period of time because the initial exhibition was supposed to be in July 2020. And it ended up being in October 2022. So I had a lot of time in between to, explore and think about. And one of the challenges was how I was going to frame these pieces because I didn't really have a plan. I'd sort of thought of draping them, but because there's so much detail in them, I thought you probably wouldn't see the detail if they were just sort of draped. So quite late in the piece, I developed this idea of putting them on empty frames, which I used cable ties to kind of hold them to the frames. And yeah, that was a really exciting sort of development once I figured that out. And I was like, all right, now I know how I'm going to lay out the artworks and to present them on the wall. It was also a really interesting exhibition because I ended up doing it as a joint exhibition with my mum because I was worried about not having enough artworks to cover the walls. In the end, I did have plenty and I probably could have done it as a solo. But yeah, I think having that opportunity to work collaboratively with her was really interesting. And actually we ended up doing a joint artwork, which was something I hadn't done before, but yeah, it was a really good opportunity and a way of kind of knitting together, excuse the pun, my works and her works, which are quite different, to have that sense of meeting in the middle, I guess.
Mm. Get a couple more photos as well.
So the inspiration for that exhibition was around it was actually about the knitting machine rather. So the object of the inspiration was the knitting machine and my frustrations with it, because they're very temperamental things. And they're also really focused on making garments. And so I felt this real sense of resistance to make practical things, which is why the exhibition was called Unuseful. So I was trying to deliberately kind of sabotage the efforts of the machine to make beautiful, symmetrical garments by introducing ladders and holes and letting things drop off the machine and then putting it back on again, which it was very, very interesting process. But they were such big artworks. It was a lot of work. So I think I ended up doing 12 in the end, and then I sort of ran out of steam. So.
But if that machine could talk, I'm sure a few frustrations to voice.
Yes.
But no, I really like this whole exhibition. I didn't see. I should have included a piece of one of the collaborative pieces that you did with your mum. But I think the really they're very emotive. I don't know, especially the unsuccessful one for me. I felt like it perfectly kind of captured that.
That one.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, I tried, and it this is what happened.
That's right. That one was quite autobiographical because it fell off the machine and I had to sort of reconstruct it. So
it sounds like you maybe had a little bit of fun doing it. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, then maybe final question is just, what are you working on now? What's your object of inspiration that you're currently in process of creating something with?
Yeah, so since we moved to regional Victoria earlier this year, I'm really putting a lot of my creative energy into our property, so garden and the house, which is taking a lot of time and energy. But I am still having one creative day a fortnight. So I work a 9-day fortnight in my job and I have one day off at the moment. And that is just an opportunity really just to kind of pot around. So I had 2 solo exhibitions last year and also had pieces in other exhibitions. It's just a lot of work. And so I'm enjoying not having deadlines and not having, a particular thing I need to do or meet. We're also still in the process of setting up our creative studios. So we have a barn out the back, it's going to be a great space, but at the moment it's kind of filled with stuff that needs to be sorted and tidied. And at the moment I just have my jewelry space set up, and then I've got a sewing room set up. So I'm doing a combination of jewelry and sewing at the moment, and it's nice. Like I said, I've been doing some jewelry of late. I'm using a jeweler's saw and I'm cutting up some pieces that were from a previous exhibition of brooches, cutting them up and trying new shapes. So that's quite nice. I'm sort of looking at an abstract botanical sort of theme, maybe some earrings, maybe some rings. And I'm also hoping to do a bit of draping. So I have a couple of mannequins now and a bit of space. So I'm hoping to use some of those knitted pieces from the unuseful exhibition and try draping them into different shapes and seeing what emerges. So
that sounds very, very interesting. I'd love to see what that final piece looks like, and whether or not it's exactly as you had imagined or it's a deviation from.
Yes,
No?
most likely nothing like what I'm imagining.
All part of the process.
That's right.
No, amazing. Well, look, I hope that your setting up of your respective creative spaces comes along nicely, and that you have enough space for all the different types of mediums that you're working on at that particular time. It sounds like you're making good progress there, and still managing to fit in a little bit of creating while you're in the process of creating the space for the creating, which is good to hear. But yeah, this has been a lovely discussion. It's been really interesting to hear about your process and your inspiration, and be able to kind of have a closer look at some of the pieces and what they mean to you, and how you went about making them. So thank you so much for joining us tonight virtually. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks from me too. I love it.
Well, thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Sadie. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to talk about this with you both.
Anytime. You're welcome back anytime. Well, look, we'll wrap it up there. To both of you, have a lovely night. Thank you again for offering your time. Again, both of you, and sharing your thoughts and a bit of an insight into what you do, Simone. It's been wonderful. Have a lovely night, both of you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. You too.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.